Hey everyone, it's Lisa with Are You My Cousin? It's time for another Thursday afternoon chat where we talk about all things genealogy. And so I want to welcome you that today it is Thursday that we are doing this live. And if you're coming in just to view us, I would love for it. If you want to tell us where you're watching from, that's great. It's just always fun to see where around the world people are watching from. I love, not only do I love genealogy, I love maps. So that's a big thing for me. Welcome. If you are just finding me, if this is the first time that you have ever found us for a Facebook or YouTube Live, wherever you're watching, I am Lisa Listen. I am the creator of Are You My Cousin website, where I work really hard to help take the overwhelm out of your genealogy research. Now, today, I'm actually broadcasting from my office here in North Carolina. So I'm on the eastern part of the U.S. and a very hot, humid day here in North Carolina. It's still a beautiful day, but it is pretty hot and humid and kind of tough to be outside today, quite frankly. You get out very early in the morning, as I'm sure my fellow Southerners will tell you, and then you hide in the air conditioning in the afternoon. So anyway, what better time to do genealogy, right? So we are here. Let me catch you up on a few things that are happening in the Are You My Cousin genealogy world. Again, if this is your first time coming, welcome. And I hope you will come and join us each week. I do show up here on Facebook and or YouTube every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time to talk about a topic of genealogy interest. So today we'll be talking about school records, and we'll get to that in a minute. The other things I wanted to kind of catch you up on are some other things that are kind of coming up in the next month or so here at Are You My Cousin? And so probably one of the first things actually going on right now is that if you have been with me over the summer, you know that I've been doing a U.S. virtual road trip with Find My Past. We've been going through the Find My Past records, stopping at various cities throughout the U.S. virtually, of course, to talk about research in those areas. So we went to Cincinnati, we went to New York, we went to Philadelphia and Baltimore. And so we are at the end of our trip. We have finished up those. You can find blog posts about that over on the website. But Find My Past has been very gracious, and they are giving us, my readers, a coupon code. And I'm going to put that up on the screen for you. And I will put that in the comments as well here. So, and that coupon code is good for 20% off either, I think it's a 12-month subscription, or I think it's a month subscription, one or the other. You can go and read the details there at Find My Past, but you can use my coupon code. There's a banner on the top of my website that will get you to the right place. But use the coupon code LISTEN20 to get 20% off. Now, one thing to tell you, that does expire on August 29th. So a little bit earlier in the day than usual, because the UK is on British summertime currently. So I would do it earlier than later, because it will expire midnight on the 29th but that's British Standard Time, which would be about 7 p.m. our time, Eastern Time. I do a lot of mental gymnastics when it comes to time zones sometimes. I don't know about you guys. Hey, Pam, it's good to see you again from Asheville, Ohio. You have rain and hot. And I'm in the part of North Carolina that could use some rain. There are definitely parts that are still recovering from the hurricanes that went up through the western part of the state and the horrific flooding that they had. So yes, fortunately, we're not there on that. But anyway, welcome. The other things that are coming up, mark your calendars, guys, for September 28th. That will be I will be doing another masterclass. We are going to be focused on old family photographs. So we're going to be talking about old family photographs. You'll be probably next week starting to get notifications in your email from me, your weekly email, and therefore you can sign up and register for that. So that's going to be a really exciting one that's coming up, as well as spending a good chunk of September focusing on photographs, old family photographs. It is a topic that you guys like. A lot of readers have photographs they're struggling to identify or date. So we're going to be talking a lot about that, and then kind of wrapping it up with a masterclass, because I do love talking about old family photos. Hey, Flo, it's good to see you from Oregon as well. So welcome, welcome. Okie doke. So let's see, anything else? Today we are talking about school records. And this is a topic I've talked about in the past. And it kind of came out, this is the time of year where schools are back in session. People are going back to school. I think this was the first week of school in our area. I don't have school-age children anymore, so I don't always keep up with the dates like I used to, of course. And then actually, to be honest, in the area where I live in North Carolina, we have a lot of year-round schools. We have modified year-round schools. We have a lot of charters. So quite frankly, there is always somebody in school. It seems to be back to school all the time. But this is the traditional back to school time. In fact, just before I got on to broadcast live, I could see all the parents walking down the neighborhood to go pick their kids up at the school down the street. It's kind of fun. I like to see the kids in the afternoon. So anyway, we're going to talk about school records and how that can help with our genealogy research. Now, I am not talking about those school records, like the individual academic records, those kinds of things, that not the individual student records that sometimes people think about, but we're watching for school records. We're watching for one of the big ones that I find that has been very helpful are what I call the school census records or school registers. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Have you guys used school records like a school census record in your genealogy research? I'd love to hear if you are familiar with those. Just drop me a comment and that'll tell me whether you have or not. And certainly as we continue to talk, if you have favorite school type of records that you use, feel free to drop them in the comments so we can learn from each other as well. But school records there's basically like census records in a sense, or attendance books in some sense. So the teacher would create the register and she would have a listing of all her students, and typically, an age would be provided, if not a birthday. The information will vary from session to session, but they will have typically an age. They might have the guardian. That's a really helpful piece of the puzzle, right? If they put down the guardian of the child, usually going to be the parent, but maybe it was an aunt, maybe it was not a parent, maybe it was somebody else. So that's a very helpful piece of the puzzle, especially if that child maybe did not live with their parents, if the parents had passed away and they were living with another family member. That's a really nice way to find that. I've even seen parents' occupations listed in these school registers, so that's a big thing as well. Sometimes the reason I really like these school registers and school census records is because they almost act like a mini census substitute. So, census records are only every 10 years. And then heaven forbid it's 1890 and we don't have that one, or maybe the federal census was lost for a certain time period where your ancestors are. That those school census records for each of those years can help to build in kind of a small sample of the people who were living there. It's not going to be everybody because not everybody had school-age children. It's not going to probably mention the wives or the mothers unless they were head of household. But it does give you the families that were there. It also can help you if they are listing out the children and parents' names are listed. It's going to help you determine family groups, because how many of us out there have had ancestors and we have a group of them and we don't know who was the father of which children, and which children were the children of a different man or woman. And it gets kind of messy when you have all these collateral ancestors there with the same name, right? But a school record can actually help differentiate that out by telling you, if it lists guardian or parent records, parents' names, that helps tremendously, because then it's a place that they document who is who. So that's a good way to do it. It also can tell you who is in that community for that year, for that, as I said, around 1890. It's a big help, definitely. So Catherine said in the 1840 Tennessee school records, you found your probable third great-grandmother and the number of children but no names, hoping it would name the second great-grandmother as her daughter. Frustration. Yes, I have seen that as well, is that sometimes they might list, instead of the children's names, they might list the parent's name, and then they'll have a column where it might say how many males and how many female children are attending school. And that's kind of the ultimate in frustration, because you find it and then you're like, what now? What now? It's kind of like that, those 1840 census records, right? Where you get the tick marks, so to speak. It might not give names, but again, that can, when you have a parent's name and it tells you how many children in the family are going to school, it can help you fill in the family a little bit as far as matching. If if your records show that you have 2 school-age boys and 1 school-age girl in the family unit, and you find a matching family unit there with the same surname, then you can kind of start to piece things together a little bit and make some assumptions to test out further on. So definitely be sure and, count everybody up and do the math, definitely. Melora's asking a really great question. She said, where do you find school records? And she's never seen any. That is an excellent question. I typically, the ones that I have used have typically been county level records. And for me, I find those at the state archives. So they're going to be at the county level because of the, and they could potentially be, if it's a city school versus a county school, be at the city level. And so you might need to check with the city hall, see their offices to see where those older records are, or with the county government, to see where those records have been. Because I research in North Carolina, most of those have been gone on and been forwarded to the North Carolina State Archives for the all the counties, so I can kind of search county to county from the archives. But that would be where I'd start. If you're really looking at those early ones, check with your archives. They can definitely kind of help point you in the right direction if you're not finding what you want to. So that would be a good place to do. I did want to ask if anybody has had experience with the school records and school census records for Native American population. That is, they did have school records as well. I personally have not used those, had that opportunity, but I wanted to kind of put that out there because I know those are out there as well. Would this be the case? Oh, so Vicky's asking, would there be school records if the school no longer exists? Absolutely. I have a feeling that 1840 school that Catherine was mentioning earlier in Tennessee probably does not exist anymore. But yes, because they would have been, if they were forwarded on, they were, again, county level records. And so the school may have dissolved, but the county supported it with their monies. And so they're the ones, creating the records and monitoring what was going on. So yes, you can find those there. And it will vary state to state. It'll vary, obviously, as we all know, state to state, county to county, and over time as to what might have been saved. So, but still really good information there. So yeah, definitely don't worry about it if the school doesn't exist any longer. If they had those records that were created at the county level, again, remember, it has to be about money. They would have kept those records. No worries, Vicki. I'm glad that you jumped in on that. I had an interesting experience. It's been a couple years ago, where somebody had, I ran into somebody who had been redoing a house, had been rebuilt, had purchased an old historic house and was updating it and redoing. I mean, basically had to take it down to the studs, I think, to get things safe again. And they discovered a wad of papers in the wall, and they were telling me about it. And I said, I think that's a school record. And sure enough, what they had found were some county school records in the wall of the house. No idea why they were there, how they got there, but it was an interesting kind of story to see where that showed up. So you never quite know, do you? So yes, so school records and registers, those are probably the first place I go to when I'm looking at the children. I've kind of exhausted everything else, and I'm looking for the children of a family. They are also, I did want to mention, sometimes that's a place to find female ancestors as well as children who maybe did not live to adulthood. So if you're filling out a family and you're trying to get the children filled out for a family and completed, sometimes you will find unknown children, or I should say unknown to you, children in those registers of those school census records, because they may have passed away and may not have lived to adulthood. Maybe they passed away and died between two census years. Their entire life was between 2 census years. And so it's conceivable that one of the very few places they would be documented would be in a school record. So that's another reason I like to get in there. It just kind of helps me with my completeness when it comes to a record for that. So definitely. Oh, Melora said her great-grandmother taught at an Indian school in Philadelphia, but you haven't been able to find the actual school records. Yeah, it's interesting. I know there were some, and I think they're at the federal level, I think. So that was something I was interested to see if anybody had any information on those or leads. Feel free to forward them to me later or leave a comment later, because I'd like to learn a little bit more about those. That's an area that I'd like to learn a little bit more about, and that would be helpful. All right, so I think hopefully I've convinced you to go after those records. It's hard because they're not typically online, and you have to go to a repository, and I know that's kind of hard these days, but they're there and they're out there, and they are a viable source for information if you get to that point in your research. And so add those to your research plan so that the next time you get to, say, a state archives or county archives, you have that ready to go and you can see those. So the Carlisle School in Pennsylvania, I will definitely look that up. Thank you, Melora. Appreciate that. All right, so there are some, okay, yeah, Catherine, they're talking about that over there. Hey, Martha, glad you can make it. Don't worry if you guys are late. I'm just glad that you could join us. So anyway, we've been talking about school registers if you're just joining us, but let's talk about some of the other school records that might happen along. And this was something that I was interested in, and I was talking to a university librarian recently as I was working on a project, and she made a comment to me and she said, Lisa, don't forget the school newspaper. Remember? Do you remember the twig? So I attended Meredith College, and she said, don't you remember your school newspaper? And I said, oh, I totally forgot about the school newspaper. And yeah, it documented the goings on at the school. It documented, the life of the campus that I lived at. Well, high schools had newspapers. Even middle schools would have newspapers sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. So I would encourage you that when you're doing your newspaper research or your school research, include the school newspapers in there, because you can find some really fascinating stuff. You learn about what was important to your ancestors during those formative years. You learn what they were interested in. You can learn who the friends are. You can find a lot of collateral friends and relatives as well. So I would encourage you to check out those school newspapers. And again, when you are researching your female ancestors, when you are researching those young women, right before they got married, maybe once they got married, you're trying to differentiate between all of those names and the maiden names and the married names, and who, where paths could have crossed for potential mates. School newspapers could be a potential for that, as well as school yearbooks. Absolutely. Pam said, it's sad because she contacted about their school records and told they had all been destroyed. That is so sad. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Pam. Maybe try and see if there are any yearbooks or newspapers that were perhaps saved either at the local library level. Maybe they had some, or if you happen to know, depending on what year, if you happen to know families who've been in the area, it's possible some of them might have them as well. Catherine said the MS Department of Archives and History has online censuses of educable children for early 20th century years. Yes, the Mississippi Department of Archives has those. That is another good record source as well. Thank you for sharing that. And Vicki says, is there a way to find old newspapers without having to pay a monthly fee? That is another great question, because yes, there is, Vicki. For old school newspapers, since we're talking about schools, I would recommend, checking with the school if the school is still exists, or the school system. I would check with the local library, the local or regional library where that school was, because oftentimes they have those local history sections, and they may have those there. They might be microfilmed, but they might have them. I would say call that local reference librarian and talk to him or her, because if they don't have it, they very well may know where to find it. So I find that the local reference librarians are such wonderful sources of information, because if they don't know where something is, they can help you find it, or they might know who you need to talk to. And so I would definitely include them on that with that. So when it comes to school newspapers, that's where I would go. If you are researching North Carolina ancestors, there's actually Digital NC has the yearbooks and for colleges and high schools that have been digitized. So you can do a straight up Google search for the high school or college that you are researching. You can do that and see what you can find for those, because some of those go back, well into the late 1800s. So I would encourage you to do a Google search, maybe include the name of the high school if you know it. If you don't, that's fine. But you do school newspaper plus the location. So maybe plus Surrey County, North Carolina, plus the year, and put a date range in there, if that makes sense. So, high school newspaper or school newspapers, location, plus a date range in your Google search for that. Ancestor Hunt has school newspapers as well. Yes, Catherine, thank you so much. And Catherine, if you happen to have a link to that, if you want to drop that in there, that'd be great too. Melora says, yes, she read regular articles in the public papers about graduating classes, names, as well as socials and going on. Definitely. So yes, the local newspapers would cover school events. Now, let me circle back to Vicky's question about finding old newspapers, chroniclingamerica.gov. That is a great resource for free newspapers. So it's chroniclingamerica.org, .gov. Chroniclingamerica.gov is a good source to start at. If you already have a subscription to something like an Ancestry, a Find My Past, those types, you oftentimes will have newspaper articles there as well, or newspapers that are part of that subscription. Find My Past currently they have a special relationship with the British National Archives or Library for their newspapers. So they have some that are free to read without a subscription and some that do require a subscription. So there are those as well. You can always reach out to the local library and ask what they have. It might be on microfilm. If you have enough information, you may be able to ask them. They may do the search for you. I think that's going to depend on, their resources, personnel resources, and if they're able to do that. But that's another option as well. And then one of the ways that I'll do, like newspapers.com, some of these newspapers will have special relationships, say with archives, or state libraries. So I can actually go to my state library here in North Carolina and access some of the newspaper subscription databases that normally, if I were just doing it privately at home on my own, would require a subscription. So I would encourage you to check that. So that was a lot. So chroniclingamerica.gov, check local and regional libraries, and then check your state libraries to see, and archives to see what you might be able to get access to through them as well. I hope that helped. Catherine said last week she found her grandfather and his older brother in their 1909 college yearbook. Can't get to Ancestor Hunt link. Oh, you're on your iPad. No problem. Yeah, just Google the Ancestor Hunt. That will get you to it as well. Isn't that so cool to find those old college yearbooks there? And there are more and more online. If you are looking at university, or college, those you can just, go to their libraries, those individual libraries, and see what they have, because they keep those as well. So those are other places to go. Those are also good places. Colleges have their own kind of archives and special collections. Another great place to find school newspapers that talk about what was going on in the community. So it's a really cool thing. I actually found out just in this would have been on, I think through Chronicling America. I was just early in my research, really kind of learning how to utilize that particular database well, and came across, I now know when my mother had the measles in elementary school. I actually called her and said, do you remember having the measles in such and such grade? And she's like, how in the world did you know about it? I said, well, apparently they wrote about it in the papers back then, because you missed school because you had it. So you never know quite what you're going to find out there. So hope that helps a little bit. Let's see. Oh, how are we doing on time? So other things that you might want to look at. We've talked newspapers, local newspapers. Don't forget to check the sports pages. If you had ancestors who played sports, check those sports pages. in the local newspaper, because you can find things there as well. Local museums, to be honest, and local historical and local archives certainly, but check with the local museums. So if the town or city where you research has a small, has its own museum, I would encourage you to reach out to them. I've talked about this before, but museums are repositories in their own right. And so they have wonderful displays, and they're there to educate. They're there to remember and to help educate the community on the history. But what they show is really just a part of what they have in their collection. So they may have more information that you could perhaps access, or that they might be able to recommend that you go places. They might have resources that they can recommend. So I would encourage you reach out to the local museums and talk to the curator. So get on the phone with them. If you're able to, go in and talk to them about what you're looking for, to see what they might have that's unique to that particular area. Sometimes, things are set up just a little different. They might have really unique collections that might not be found anywhere else. They might have the photo collections from that area. So that would be an important thing. I know that one of the North Carolina State Archives recently on Facebook was sharing photos from some African American schools that were around, and it has a wonderful picture of this entire group of students. And so I asked him, I said, please tell me, have they been identified? And she said a lot of them had been identified, the individuals. So it's a really neat thing that they had this collection. So always do your search, but then pick up the phone, and if you need more, if you're not sure where else to turn, and ask those in the know for that area where you're researching, to where else you could look, what else they might have, what would they recommend, and see what else you can find. It's a bit like a treasure hunt sometimes, I think, but then again, I think genealogy is a bit like a treasure hunt too sometimes. So I would encourage you to do that as well. All right, has anybody found any other interesting school records in their research? Go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I know I have found things in the family, such as report cards. I found tucked in, I think it was a shoebox of photographs. I found some report cards for one of my aunts, and that was a really fun thing to have. Did it get me any further in my genealogy research? Well, no, but from a family history perspective, it told me about her. It was signed by her father, always signed by the father, and not her mother, because her mother had passed away. She wasn't particularly very good in math, but she really liked geography. So, you pick up on these little things that are really fascinating to learn about that individual. So Kelly has her report cards from her great uncle Ray. It's just fun. It's interesting. It gives us a little bit more information about that ancestor. You know them a little bit better. And I think that's so important. How to find them, can't afford memberships, too well off people to do any footwork. Everything online. So doing things online is good, Andy. So yes, you can do some school records online. I know I have seen school records on both Find My Past and at Ancestry. But if you need something that's local, that is not online, that you have not been able to find, I would call the archives and ask them. They may be able to do a lookup for you. They may have had something digitized that just hasn't shown up yet online, so that they could perhaps help you out doing that. They may be able to, some archivists and some libraries are able to do some searching for you. That's very, I want to say, Andy, that's going to be kind of limited depending on their personnel, how much manpower they have. Archives will typically charge, but it's a small fee. Local libraries, sometimes, depending on how busy they are, they may just do it for you if it's a fairly simple task type thing. So that would be something you perhaps do as well. So that I would just get on the phone and call and ask and see what you can work out in that way. Oh, Catherine, she was hoping WikiTree would get further back on our Richardsons, but they didn't. So what she's referring to is it's the WikiTree challenge. And so they've been doing a year-long thing over at WikiTree about doing guest stars trees and helping to break walls. So essentially they take one person a week and they dive into that tree and they work really, really hard, and they, to help extend it back and break down some brick walls. And so actually last night they just did the big reveal. They've been working on my family tree for the last week. And so Catherine and I actually are related through the Richardsons. We have these Richardsons in our tree, and they were not able to get further back on that one. And honestly, Catherine said a lot, and I haven't looked at recently as much, but it's probably time I pick that one back up and head back. So it was really interesting when they did the big reveal for me, guys. So I was so surprised. One thing I had no idea about was that I actually have roots back into New England, back into Connecticut. And that was, you guys, if you've watched me and followed me, if you just listen to my voice, my family's from the South. We've been in North Carolina, Virginia, for a long, long, long time. And so it was just so interesting to find out that I had this line that goes way, way, way back in Connecticut. So I can't even tell you that much about it because I haven't had a chance to really explore it, but I want to do that. And so it was a lot of fun to do. You can head over, it's on YouTube. If you want to head over to the WikiTree YouTube channel, you'll probably see it over there. So it was really cool to see that and to know that there were all these people in the background for a week working on this family tree. It was really interesting to see. So it was a lot of fun. And I was really appreciative to all of those helping. If any of you who are watching participated in that, thank you so much. I really am very appreciative of all the hard work they put in, definitely. Vicki grew up in the Cincinnati suburb in the greater Cincinnati area, pretty big. So what library, in this case, would you reach out to? I would start in the suburbs and work my way into the city, probably, because it shouldn't take long. It's really just a phone call, I would think. And you can check the online databases, but I would probably just pick up the phone and call the reference desk and talk to them and see how you can get the ball rolling for that and what they might have, doing it that way. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would check really both of them. I'd start local and then work my way into the city with that. Because, if it was a large event, maybe there was a large academic event that they did that was highlighted. Maybe there were some large awards that were given out, and that would be a way that you would see not only locally, but in a regional paper. So for instance, scholarships, maybe somebody won a scholarship to a private school or a college or university. Yes, that's going to be picked up locally, but it could be picked up too on that regional level. So I would definitely do that as well. Yeah, sometimes I just find that I love tech. I love to be on I love to research online. I can do it for a very long time. But sometimes, in all honesty, the faster way is to pick up a phone and call and talk to somebody, as opposed to, spending 2 hours trying to get through all these databases and still maybe miss something. It's going to be important to try and talk to somebody. All right, guys, that's what I've got for you today. This has been fun. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for asking all these really fantastic questions. Let me put in, if you want to know more, I'm going to give you a link to a post that I have over on my website about getting started using school records. So let me pop that in there. I'm going to pop that link in the comments for you. There you go. Oh, it's coming. There you go. It's coming. So I would encourage you, head over there, check it out and see what you've got. We can keep the discussion going in the comments if you want over on the website. That would be great. And if you have some really great finds, feel free to pop them in the comments on that blog post, because it really does help learn from each other. I really enjoy doing that. So, all right, guys, I will talk to you next week. I can't believe we're going to be in September almost. So have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, guys.